So a little bit late on this, but I just wanted to give my thoughts on Mikey Garcia in his pretty dominant decision victory over Adrien Broner. Unanimous decision. Judges scored it 116, 112 times 2, 117, 111. And actually, I mean, when I was first watching it, I was kind of multitasking. I wasn't able to completely keep my eyes on the action and everything. Like I said, I had a busy weekend. I thought that it was a little bit closer than I thought when I managed to sit down and actually watch and see every punch. Initially, I thought that Garcia won 9 rounds to 3, 117, 111, like one of the judges. When I rewatched it, I wound up scoring it 11 to 1. I thought Garcia pretty much handled it. Broner had good spurts of action, but Garcia had good rounds of action. I think that was really the difference. The first round was kind of a swing round. You could go either way with that. I'd say the ninth and the 10th were fairly close. One round I gave to Broner. That wound up being the ninth, and then the 10th I wound up edging to Garcia, but that was a bit of a swing round too. So I could definitely see where the judges were coming from with regard to their decision. But I do think that like an 8-round to 4 fight is being pretty damn fair to Broner. I think that's giving him a little bit more benefit of doubt than would otherwise be, I guess, maybe neutral in terms of things. But I mean, it's like a round by round. Sometimes you got to make a snap decision in rounds that you may see as close. And Broner, his good spurts tended to be towards the end of rounds, so I could see how some of those more eye-catching shots that made some of the crowd ooh and ah a bit were able to actually sway the judges in that fashion. But overall, I thought Garcia did a damn fine job of just kind of controlling the action, controlling the pace, controlling things with his jab as well as the body work. He was doing really good at splitting Broner's guard, where it was really weird because Broner had a high guard, but he had a high guard where it's like his elbows were bowed out and his gloves weren't really protecting his face. They were like protecting his temples and like his forehead. So while that may be good in terms of avoiding Garcia hitting you up high on the temple, where Broner has been hurt repeatedly before. I mean, even when he fought Carlos Molina in a dominant decision for Broner, he was a bit wobbly there. Shaky legs, and I think it was the first round where Molina was able to catch him up high on the head. I guess that may just be the weak spot on him. He has he has a pretty good amount of punch resistance. His jaw is definitely solid, as you've seen in the past, and as we saw here against Garcia, considering the fact that Garcia was able to land some pretty good right hands, some very flush jabs. Garcia has that kind of jackhammer jab, that almost like Jermaine Taylor-esque jab. It's like he steps into it and lands pretty much like a power punch, not so much as like a setup punch. Broner did fairly well with his jab, at least in the first couple of rounds, I thought. Or at least he was trying to kind of set things up. He didn't quite get the power punches off around it, but the jab was at least coming, snapping out there with fairly good regularity. But, I mean, generally speaking, the first about 6 or 7 rounds was all Garcia. I thought maybe the 6th round you could possibly edge to Broner as well, but I wouldn't have felt comfortable in giving that round to Broner, considering that I thought Garcia did the more consistent work. He was constantly touching Broner. Even if everything wasn't completely landing flush and like snapping his head back and anything like that, he was making contact. He was constantly making contact. Whereas Broner, even when he would make contact, it tended to be a bit few and far between, and it wasn't always necessarily head-snapping stuff. It wasn't until later in the fight where Broner landed some of the more eye-catching stuff, as I kind of previously mentioned. But in particular to the body work. In a way, this judging based off of this fight, I mean, you could tell that Garcia just has proven what a lot of people kind of felt about him, but hadn't necessarily been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt before in terms of his skill level. His technical ability, his timing is top-notch. It's at every bit pound for pound level in terms of ability. He just doesn't necessarily quite have the entire body work of accomplishments behind him to I would say like slot him into like say top 5. Right now I'd say bottom half of top 10 though. Like I definitely would be comfortable placing him there. But especially considering the fact that won a world title at 126, 130, 135, just cleanly and conclusively defeated Adrien Broner, who himself is a multi-weight champion, and himself a guy that even in spite of some of the missteps that he's had and the seeming inconsistency in recent years. His only other losses came to, straight up welterweights in terms of Sean Porter and Marcos Maidana. I mean, I guess you could say that Maidana came up from 140, but for all intents and purposes, I mean, the guy, he went up for a reason. It wasn't just because, he went up for the money. He went up because, it was a bit difficult for him to make 140. His power absolutely carried. And he gave Mayweather arguably the toughest fight of his career, in a fight that arguably Maidana could have won. So that's no small shakes there. And then same here with Sean Porter. Sean Porter is an extremely difficult opponent to fight. So for Garcia to beat Broner, actually I think maybe more conclusively than both Porter and Maidana is a big accomplishment for him, and very much in the sense of what pound for pound is supposed to be. So that's where I come from with regard to that. The only thing though is towards the end of the fight, towards the later rounds, I'm not sure if it was because of the fact that 140 is seemingly an easy weight for Garcia to make. It's possible that he may not have gone as hard in the cardio and the stamina department, working on his conditioning, or if that combined with some of the body work of Broner late in the fight possibly played a role, as well as the fact that, Garcia was hitting Broner quite a bit, and sometimes when you're just hitting a guy with everything and they're able to take it and keep pressing you back, pushing you back, coming forward and giving you kind of that nervous energy, sometimes you tire out in that regard too. So just kind of based off of this, even though he had a good conclusive performance over Broner, I wouldn't really like his chances as much were he to move up to 147. I think 140 is kind of where Garcia tops out at. In a way, Mikey Garcia at 140 kind of reminds me a bit of Roman Gonzalez at 115, where he's very effective still at the weight class against a legit opponent at that weight class, a legit like high level, pretty much top tier or near top tier opponent at that weight class, but isn't necessarily optimal at that weight class. So ideally, if Garcia were to continue his career at 135, I think that would be the best career move in terms of longevity. If he wanted to become like a long reigning champion, I think there's nobody that's really gonna bother him at 135 unless you're a fighter that's extremely physical, very high volume, and is capable of pushing Garcia back and making him work every second of every minute of every round for the full 12. That's the type of fighter that I think will give Garcia problems. Incidentally, people have kind of compared Garcia to Floyd Mayweather in the past. Those were the type of fighters that gave Mayweather a lot of difficulty. Just guys that were just highly active, threw a lot of punches at you, made you work constantly, made you have to think constantly, giving you that nervous energy of, oh, I have to predict what he's going to do next. But he's moving in so many different angles and he's throwing punches from so many different angles. It's like I have to react. You're forcing those constant reactions and those constant like second thoughts of reactions out of them that can just make the fight more difficult mentally, even if not physically. But both at the same time, most definitely, especially if it's at a higher weight. So while he did a fine job against Broner, and even at 140, 140 is probably about to clear up fairly soon. And even with the possible talk of a Terrence Crawford, with the beef between not only Top Rank and Heyman fighters, but between Bob Arum and Mikey Garcia, considering the fact that Garcia was on the shelf for all these years because of Bob Arum. And considering the fact that, the Top Rank definitely tends to hold a grudge, as has been shown in the past, with a number of their fighters that they used to sign, they're not very keen on doing business with their former employees. So, with that in mind, honestly, the Top Rank doesn't seem to like doing business, especially not with former employees, unless they have every shadow of a doubt cleared that their fighter is going to win, because they don't really want to be paying their former clients, as Garcia would be, getting paid, and they don't want to have the chance of like a Vasily Lomachenko or Terrence Crawford having their kind of hype train, their run, their high level, high fan base run, high money earning run, displaced by Mikey Garcia, who's not even with Top Rank. He'd be by a rival promoter, so that would essentially prop up the level of Heyman, PBC, Mikey Garcia, and sink the ship of top rank Vasyl Lomachenko or Terence Crawford or what have you. In spite of the fact that Terence Crawford should definitely be favored over Garcia. I think at the very least, technically, it's a fairly even match, but I think Crawford, in the physical sense, is a bigger guy. He's just a naturally bigger guy, so I think that would wind up kind of being the difference in the fight. Not unlike, I guess you might say, Jermall Charlo when he fought against J-Rock. That was a close fight. All the way up until the knockout. It just happened to be Charlo's size and power that made the difference in that fight. Otherwise, I mean, technically speaking, they were pretty much equal. But like I said, solid win for Garcia. As for Adrien Broner, I'm not exactly sure what the future portends for him. I'd imagine this might be the last time he makes 140. I mean, for all the bluster and stuff that he talks about, being back in focus. I've always felt like Broner trains hard in training, in spite of the recreational activities. I don't think that Broner's a slacker in training at all. Definitely not at all. I think he always puts his nose to the grindstone, and he's a guy that works hard and plays hard, basically. But I do think that making those extra sacrifices, starving himself, having to keep a strict diet. You know how he loves his nachos and everything. That may be coming to an end. And I imagine that there's the possibility that at this point, considering the fact that he has gained a considerable amount of name value, especially amongst casual fans, because there's a lot of casual fans of boxing that don't even really know boxers like that. They may know of like Floyd Mayweather and a couple other guys, Mayweather, Pacquiao, maybe Andre Ward, maybe some of the HBO and Showtime guys, maybe. But they definitely know Adrien Broner. Like Adrien Broner is like definitely one of the biggest name value stars in boxing. Somebody that's recognizable to just common people on the street. For better or worse, he's definitely made himself a name in terms of the social media sense, at the very least. So in that regard, I could see him potentially kind of get thrown potentially against the Wolves, maybe having a defense against Errol Spence to kind of get Errol Spence's name popping even more than it already is. If he was to go in there and starch Adrien Broner, which I think that he probably would, that would definitely be a big boon for Errol Spence's fan base, and his career prospects, his earning prospects. Otherwise, I mean, I could see some other potentially good money fights for Adrien Broner, and fights that may potentially be winnable for him. I mean, I think him versus Danny Garcia in a bit of a crossroads fight would be an excellent fight to watch. I think the build-up would be fantastic. A lot of shit talk on either side. Otherwise, I could see him either kind of getting matched against maybe a rematch against Sean Porter, maybe a defense versus a defense for Keith Thurman. Something like that, or something of that nature, and maybe even trying to build up, use as a gatekeeper in a way, but a gatekeeper with a high name value and being the A side on the promotion for some of the young stars that Heyman has signed coming up. He has so many fighters signed on the come up, that have been fighting on PBC, Knockout Tuesdays, and things of that nature on Bounce TV and such. That maybe they could come across Adrien Broner, and if they beat him, it looks like they're ready for the next level. And if not, then hey, Broner's right back in it, right back in the mix of high-level welterweight money fights. But that's kind of the way that I see it going for him. I think Garcia, him versus Garcia, I think is a good, well-matched fight. Maybe even Brandon Rios. Brandon Rios I think would be a solid one too. Former client of Robert Garcia, definitely a good friend of his, and everything, and Mikey as well. I think that'd be a pretty solid fight to make. Victor Ortiz is back in action as well. I'll review him in another video. But hey, maybe Broner versus Victor Ortiz. That'd be a pretty interesting fight. Ortiz in a way has some of that same kind of crossover appeal because he's appeared in other things beyond boxing as well. So a lot of people are familiar with that name. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a crossroads matchup such as that going down as well. But yeah, getting back to Garcia, good win, solid win. Maybe Jorge Linares hopefully would be the next fight. Get him that full WBC belt, get him the Ring Magazine Championship, which is still highly valued. That lineal championship, which Linares definitely deserves to have. And you could see where it goes from there. He's definitely down for the big money fights though, so I definitely give him props for his willingness to push himself to the limit. But I think that's gonna do it for this one, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.